Hello, everybody. Welcome back to College Football Coast to Coast. It is second to last week, really, for us to talk about the regular season of college football. And Tyler, we're going to break it down. Starting off with this past week, some crazy games. Once again, another really good weekend. I don't think it was as good as last weekend, but I think it was pretty close. But it started with some great games. And the first one is in the ACC. North Carolina traveled to Wake Forest. I highlighted this game a lot in last show, and I said this is going to be a very key game for a ranked 15th North Carolina Tar Heel team that hasn't faced too much so far this year. So this is kind of the first big one, and they took care of business late in this game, Tyler. And I thought for a minute that Wake Forest might pull it off at home.
Yeah, this was, Wake Forest actually played like the Wake Forest team that we're really accustomed to. Couple of weeks, it's been a couple of weeks, that we were talking about this team, going back to that Louisville game where they threw like 8 interceptions in that game. But this was the game that we were all circling. North Carolina was heading on their way to the ACC championship game. This was pretty much a de facto championship game for them. If they win this one, then they move on to Charlotte to face Clemson. That's exactly what happened. But this was a star quarterback battle in the making. Drake May on one side, and then you had Sam Hartman on the other. May had 3 touchdowns. Hartman had 4 touchdowns. So I said last week that this was going to be a high-scoring shootout. That's exactly what it was. I think that the defenses had their troubles. Josh Downs had a good game, the receiver for North Carolina, as this was a big year for North Carolina. Last year was the year that they were supposed to win the ACC, especially with the veteran quarterback that they had and the returning talent, but they just had a down year last year. I think that the expectations got to them. And then this year, no one really thought that they were going to win the Coastal Division. Everyone was all saying that it was going to be Miami Clemson, but Miami was having a down year this year. So North Carolina, with this win, locks up the Coastal Division. Will head on to Charlotte to face Clemson. So it should be a good one in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, should be a great one. I'm hoping North Carolina can pull it out for the sake of my ACC pick once again. But great football game here. Of course, North Carolina pulls it out 36-34 on the road at Wake Forest, and looking forward to a really good week next week. Moving away from the ACC to our next game, we're headed to the Big 12, I believe, and that is number 4 TCU headed to Austin, Texas. The big Texas clash here. I mean, TCU wasn't supposed to be that team this year, and turns out they are. Being at number 4. So, the Horned Frogs are for real, and going into Texas and actually playing some quality defense and getting a win. I mean, this is something that we are not accustomed to, in the Big 12 is a 27 total points scored in this game. 27 points is normally what one team scores at half, in the Big 12. So this is very different. TCU looked like they handled business, were able to run the ball. I think that's the difference. Was TCU was able to move the ball with the run, while Texas struggled to run the football. Turnovers played a big role into it. Late turnover, I'll let you talk a little bit about that, but a late turnover really cost this game for Texas. But good win for TCU and Sonny Dykes. I think this is a step in the right direction for them to go 12-0 this year.
Yeah, the Texas offense was stifled, like you mentioned. That late turnover pretty much sealed the deal. Quinn Ewers threw a late interception. You got to give credit to both defenses. I mean, this was a defensive battle for 4 quarters. This is not the type of football that we're accustomed to here in the Big 12. Usually, we're seeing 42 to 38 type of games. So this was nice to see. This is a Big 10 score that you're seeing in the Big 12. But there's a lot of critics that said before this, that TCU, were a bunch of frauds, and how their schedule was. Like every game that they played, the backup quarterback had to come in. This game, though, Quinn Ewers played for 4 quarters, and the TCU defense really stifled him. I said going into this game, if TCU is going to win this one, they have to stop Bijan Robinson, and that's exactly what happened. And I think that's one of the main reasons why that TCU was able to win this game. Bijan Robinson only had 29 yards rushing, and Quinn Ewers only had 133 and didn't have a single passing touchdown. So TCU's offense, wasn't great. It wasn't perfect as well. Their running game, they relied heavily on that. And then, Max Duggan had a touchdown as well. So, it wasn't the game that we're accustomed to, but TCU, was able to score when they did. At one point they went up like 17-3, and you're pretty much okay. This game's over. Texas's offense, hasn't found an identity for 4 quarters. So really good win for TCU as they officially clinch a spot in the Big 12 championship. Whoever they play still yet to be decided right now. It would be K State. So TCU is really in the driver's seat. If they win out, they'll be in the Final Four for the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think it'll be another great game, like we mentioned. I think last show, be a great game there with TCU and K State again facing off for a Big 12 title. Would be excellent. Battle of the Purple, like we said, and Tyler, you're wearing that purple hoodie today, so it fits in well.
Yep. Well,
But moving from the Big 12 to the other big, we're going to the Big 10. Kind of this was the best game in the Big 10 this weekend, which is pretty sad. Aside from a Maryland and Penn State game, which was a blowout. Purdue goes to Champaign, Illinois, and they take care of business. I mean, this is the wackiest division probably in all of college football right now, because you just don't know what's going to happen week to week and who's going to be there in the end, because every team there is about the same caliber wise until we see what happens in a couple of years. But for Purdue to get a win on the road against a good Illinois team, it speaks volumes to what they have decided to do late in the season. And I think, a lot of it's attributed to Aiden O'Connell and what the offense was able to do. I mean, this is the most offense I've seen them put up in muster in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. So this seems like a step in the right direction for the Boilermakers. And for Illinois, I mean, back to the drawing board, you got a big game. Like we mentioned last week, you got a big game. You're going to Michigan next week. Or later this week, and you really got to hold your own there in some cold weather. So I mean, they have an opportunity to still beat a really good Michigan team if their defense steps up. But as far as Purdue goes, I mean, they've got the head-to-head now, so they're kind of heading the west side of the division.
I would like that because I picked Purdue in the preseason, but whenever Purdue faces off, if you have a number next to your name, they're going to play their A game. It's like every year that, we saw them, the Ohio State years, and then the upset of last year, Michigan State, and then Iowa. But, Purdue was an up and down team. Illinois, has, started off the season very hot, but now they have some question marks. I mean, their defense was playing lights out, and then like on Saturday, they absolutely get exposed on the run. There was a battle of the running backs here. Chase Brown did go down with injury, but in the end, he did have 98 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. And then Tommy DeVito had an okay game. I think that's really what's bogging down this Illinois offense. They can run the ball, but they just can't really find that, that they're open receivers. So I think that there's definitely a lot of question marks setting into the Big House matchup against Michigan. They pretty much have to win that, or their Indianapolis hopes might already be dashed, especially, with Purdue facing off. And, we have, Iowa and then Minnesota facing off this weekend. So whoever wins that could also be a test. So who knows who's going to win the Big Ten West? I've been saying that for weeks. It could be one team, and then it could be another team the next week. So this was a huge win for Purdue. Whoever comes out of the Big Ten West, good for them. But like I've been mentioning, whoever wins that side of the division, I don't really see having a really good time against the winner of Ohio State and Michigan. But still a good win for Purdue, but a lot of question marks for Illinois that needs to be answered.
Yeah, speaking of good wins, we're going to the Pac-12 here. The Washington Huskies travel to Eugene, Oregon, and pull out a win in one of the toughest places to play in Autzen Stadium. Let me tell you what, the weather was crappy as we expected. It sucked, but Washington, goes in and beats a Oregon team that's been firing on all cylinders. But I think here's the problem. I will say that we were wrong about this game. But I'll admit it. But at the same time, Oregon really hasn't played good talent in the Pac-12 in a few weeks. And it's shown because they put up a lot of points, but defensively, I mean, terrible. I mean, it looked like Big 12 football. but they played terrible defense. I mean, you were holding teams to just a couple, 2 or 3 touchdowns a game, but to give up 37 to Michael Penix Jr. in this offense is unacceptable from an Oregon Duck standpoint. I mean, 37-34. Uh, and Washington forced turnovers. I mean, that's what they used to do years ago when they were that team that was, fighting for that 4th spot in the college football playoff. They forced turnovers, and that was the name of the game for them. Just pressure, pressure, pressure. And they got after Bo Nix and forced him into some wild throws in this one.
Yeah, I was half right on this one. On the Sports Scramble, I did have this as my upset alert pick, but whenever we looked at this game on Monday, I did pick Oregon outright. I just wasn't really confident in Washington. I knew that this was going to be a rivalry game; it was going to be close, and it ended up coming down to the final minutes. Washington, trailed in this game. It was a back and forth battle, like it always is. But Washington was able to kick a late game field goal. And, what a game for Michael Penix. He had 2 touchdowns. I know he had a turnover, but 408 yards passing against this Oregon defense is really something. We haven't really seen that since Stetson Bennett in the season opener. And, Bo Nix had a good game. He had 2 touchdowns. So, not the Heisman numbers that he's been putting up. But like you mentioned, Oregon, I know that we've been giving them hype, but they really haven't played anybody in a couple of weeks. They just faced Colorado, who's the dumpster fire of the Pac-12. So yeah, I know it's at home, and then next week you can't really get ahead of yourselves. You have Utah coming to your place, so that's just that could be back-to-back losses and really kick Oregon out of the Pac-12 championship. So this loss really affects them. I know that they only had 1 loss in the conference, but the way that USC's been playing, the way that Utah's been playing, you can't really afford a loss, especially this late in the season. So this was definitely a big hit. Oregon right now is definitely out of the playoff discussion. They would have made it if they would have, went out, but you can't really forget that loss in week 1, 49-3. That's just a really bad loss. I know it's the number 1 team, but you just can't really lay an egg early on in the season. But a good win for Washington. They're sitting at 8-2 right now, and they're like, not so fast. We can be in Las Vegas too.
Yeah, I remember the atrocious start that this Huskies team got off to
Yeah.
start the season, and we thought that they'd be in the bottom tier of the Pac-12 like they have been in the last couple of years. So, a big step for them in that Husky team for Oregon, back to the drawing board for another season because they're virtually out of playoff contention, still alive for the Pac-12 championship, but you are out of contention, for a national championship at this point. Moving away from the Pac-12, we'll head back down to the Deep South. Alabama headed to Oxford, a cold one in Oxford, Mississippi. Here, I saw a lot of people bundled up there. Number 9, Alabama. It feels good to say Alabama's at number 9 here because it hasn't happened in a long time. But it gives some other teams some opportunities there. But number 9, Alabama, the Crimson Tide head to Oxford. They pull out a 30-24 victory over the Ole Miss Rebels, who are at ranked 11. I tell you what, back and forth game here. Whoever finished with the ball last, I think, kind of was the victor in this one. Other than Ole Miss not being able to convert, too much pressure. I think this is the best I've seen Alabama secondary play all season. They did a pretty good job defending the pass. As far as the run went, still couldn't defend the run. There's holes in that Alabama defense still, even though you get a win here. Ole Miss just looks sloppy. It just kind of looked like the LSU game. They just couldn't find their rhythm in this one. And being at home, that's a problem. So I think that, for this one, Ole Miss really shot themselves in the foot with this. They had plenty of opportunities in order to take advantage and take over this game and win, 33-30 is an option in this one, or even a 31-30 is an option here, and you hand Alabama back-to-back losses for the first time since 2013. So, I mean, it really does seem like Ole Miss is right there, kind of with the LSU thing. LSU is right there. But this is a sloppy loss for Ole Miss. Should have won this game in Oxford.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough loss. I mean, Ole Miss was still, contention, to run the table for the SEC West. They just really needed to root for an LSU loss. But now with the Alabama win, LSU moves on to Atlanta. But going to this game, this was the tale of the first half and the second half. Ole Miss gets out to a 17-7 lead, and I'm sure everyone in the country is like, is Alabama really going to lose 3 losses before the Iron Bowl, which hasn't happened since the 2010 season? So that would have been a story itself. But in the end, Alabama, every time that they lose a game, they always respond. But I think, Ole Miss on the offense, they played a really good game. Their defense has been limiting them, in their only loss to LSU. They really got exposed in the second half when the Tigers dominated them. But this was the tale of the two running games. And even for Alabama, we didn't even see Jahmyr Gibbs step up on the field. We haven't really heard of, what happened. Was it an injury? Was it just rest? But McClellan was able to step up in the backup role, get 91 yards on the ground. Then Quinshon Judkins, Ole Miss, we knew that they could run the ball. We just didn't know how good, and effective that they could run on this Alabama defense. And they did just that. Judkins had over 100 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. But Bryce Young, the way that he's been playing is really the main reason why Alabama won this game. Ole Miss wasn't able to really get pressure off him. And whenever they got close to him, he did his little shimmy move, do a little pump fake. He was able to find Ja'Cory Brooks in the end zone. So, and then you got to give credit to Alabama's field goal kicker, Will Reichert. He was able to be automatic. I know that for years, Alabama hasn't been able to find that consistent kicker, but they definitely find him in Reichert. He's probably going to go on to the NFL and be a really solid kicker. But this was definitely a much needed win for Alabama. Now they'll finish the season fairly easily. I mean, they get both of their home games. Austin Peay, they'll probably win that one convincingly. And then Auburn, we already know about that team. Cadillac Williams is a good story, but we know that they're not good of a football team this year. So I think that Alabama will be in 10-2 and be in contention to go to the Cotton Bowl. So still a really good season for Alabama. I know it's not the the Alabama of the past that we're seeing, the college football playoff and the national championship. But if you're outside of Alabama, if you're not an Alabama fan, then you definitely love to see the parity going on. But still, if you're an Alabama fan, you still got to be content with a 10-2 season and a trip to either the Sugar Bowl or the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, it's a good season, on paper by Alabama for those Alabama fans in that
Probably not.
Alabama fan base. I think it's a tough season for them and Nick Saban as well. So I feel like this is a good time to take it outside of the Power Five to the Group of Five, especially to the American Conference, where you had number 22 UCF travel to Tulane to take on the Green Wave. Let me tell you what here. This right here was the tale of whether Tulane was going to be the top Group of Five team and get that opportunity there, and be that really good team outside of the Power Five. And they get beat by a UCF team that looks like they play musical chairs every weekend. And it's really tough to gauge them in what they do. They've had bad losses on the road, and it's set up nice for Tulane. That's why I figured Tulane could take care of business here. I really didn't have them on upset alert type thing, and this really was one of those. I mean, I think they really should have handled business, especially at home. I mean, your two losses come at home. That's the tough part about it. You lose to a bad Southern Miss team, and you lose to a up and down roller coaster UCF team. Both close margins to lose by, but it really is tough to see that happen. I mean, I think it was a matter of time. I would have been shocked had Tulane, won 10 games this year. I think it's kind of crazy to think that, or 11 games. So I think it was in due time, but I feel like UCF really needs to find their identity still. I mean, a good win on the road, but they need to figure it out fast.
Yeah, the big question mark looking at this game last week, I know we were targeting at UCF, on the road, they've got blown out, by Louisville, had a bad loss against East Carolina. And we know that they're a better football team at home. But now that they showed that, that they could be a formidable team on the road, they got out to a 24-7 lead. Tulane was able to make it close in the fourth quarter, but it was a little too late. Tulane's defense just couldn't have any answers against John Ross Plumlee. I mean, he's a dual threat quarterback for a reason. He beat you through the air and then also with his legs. I mean, looking at his stat line right now, he had 16 carries, 176 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's no quarterback numbers. That's some like RB1 numbers right there. So the former Ole Miss product, John Ross Plumlee, had a good game as well. Like I mentioned, Tulane just too slow of a start. I mean, you can't start off that slow against Gus Malzahn coached. You got to give it to him. The program that he built up at Auburn before he got fired, and then he goes and to UCF. Really, UCF with Scott Frost, was one of the great Group of 5 teams, and then they don't really skip a beat with Gus Malzahn. So yeah, this is definitely a big upset for the Group of 5 perspective. We were all hinting, oh, Tulane's just a walk in the park. They're going to make it to the New Year's Six. Now, who knows who's going to make it to the New Year's Six? I mean, there's a plethora of teams. I know that there's going to be 3 teams ranked. It'll be interesting to see, if Tulane is still in the top 25 of the college football playoff. I'm sure UCF will probably flip-flop with them to 17. Do we see a Coastal Carolina emerge in the top 25? Do we see a South Alabama move up since they're 8-2? So there's definitely some teams still in the mix. So I would not count out not only UCF but also the Sun Belt teams as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of good teams there in the Sun Belt, one included there in the top 25. We'll get to later. But you know what? It's a good time to get our first sponsor of the show. It is Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. If you guys want to check them out in Houston over at H-Town, Chet holds it down over there for us from the Sports Scramble podcast. And he was having a little pregame beer last night during the show, a little light percentage alcohol in that one. He seemed to be enjoying it, so we're going to have to get some of that soon. I know we're trying to set up to go out there and do a show here in the new year. So if you guys want to stick around, see all that content there. And if you guys want to check out any of their beer, as Chet does pretty often, you guys can head over to www.buffbrew.com. That is www.buffbrew.com. Tyler, getting to our games of the week. First in the ACC, we got 2 really good games here. No ranked matchup really to look at this week. First one being the NC State Wolfpack. Taking a loss last week. They're headed to Louisville to face off against another team that's up and down on a roller coaster ride all the time. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. I think this is the close game, only because both of these teams seem really close together. I think the difference is Louisville at home. I think that's the problem for NC State here. I think they take back-to-back losses because of the way the schedule stacked up. There's no reason they should have lost last week, and going into another week here, they need to bounce back. But I don't think it comes against a Louisville team that looks unstoppable at home this year. So I'm gonna roll with the Cardinals. I'll take them 34-27 in this one.
Yeah, very bad loss for NC State last week, losing to a 2-7 Boston College team that was pretty much in the gutters of the ACC. NC State had everything going for them, and then it just sucks that Devin Leary had to suffer that injury. He's out for the year. It's just like this NC State offense doesn't have an identity without him. Their defense has been phenomenal, but you can have the best defense in the world, but you got to be able to put up some points. And they lost by 1 to Boston College, so that was definitely a shot in the dark for them. But Louisville, like you mentioned, I feel like every year there's always talent on this team, but they just can never put it together for like a 9-win or a 10-win season. They haven't done that since the Lamar Jackson era. But I trust Malik Cunningham in that offense more than I do right now with NC State. I definitely think that NC State will be able to put up more points than they did against Boston College. Louisville's defense, their secondary has some holes. But in the end, this is in Louisville, Kentucky, so I'm going to go with the Cardinal. I think that they want to get this big win before they face their rivals to close out the season in Kentucky. So I'll go 34-31. I'll give it to the Cardinal over the Wolfpack.
Kind of close score there, but for both of us there, a touchdown and a field goal in that one. Syracuse is traveling to Wake Forest next on the schedule there. Wake Forest, a close loss last week, and coming in against a Syracuse team that has fallen apart ever since that loss against Clemson, and this looks like it might build into this one. So I'm going to take the Demon Deacons at home. They look a lot better on offense, absolutely, and I just think that it's time that Sam Hartman and that offense gets a good quality win here. And I think it comes against a decent Syracuse team that just lost a lot of momentum with some
Yeah.
losses, and I think that'll play into this. So I'm going to take the Demon Deacons. I'm going to go 27 to 17 in this one. I think that it's only because of Wake Forest defense. I think they can step up. Syracuse struggles to move the ball if they can't run the ball. So I think that's the difference in this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, Syracuse had everything going for them. They were number 16, and they had every chance to beat Clemson. Their offense could not score in that second half. Wake Forest had seen they're on a losing skid right now. I think they end that here. I just feel like looking at this matchup, they're definitely a better football team. They have the advantage at quarterback. Garrett Schrader has been okay. He's been able to win some games for Syracuse, but that's a team that relies heavily on the running game, like you mentioned. If they can't get going, then it's going to be very hard. So I think that both defense will rise to the occasion, but in the end, I'm going to trust the arm of Sam Hardman in this one. Looks like he's rolling. He missed the first weeks with a blood clot that he had. So I think that Wake Forest is going to finish the season pretty good. On top. Not on top of the division. They'll probably finish second place in the Atlantic behind Clemson. So I think that Wake Forest will win this one. I'll go 28-20 to defeat the Orange.
Yeah, so Tyler and I both picking the Cardinals and the Demon Deacons in the ACC, moving away to the Big 12. Some good ones here. The first one is number 4 TCU. They're still there in the top 4, and we hope they stay there. They're headed to Waco to face off against the Baylor Bears, who have stuck around a little bit here and there to see what's going to happen. They're peeking through the windows. So I think that TCU can take care of business pretty easily here in Waco. I know it's a tough place to play, but TCU looks bigger than that, especially with their win at Austin, Texas. So I think that the Horned Frogs can take care of business here over the Bears. I'm going to go 42-31. I think TCU's defense has a lax game. They had a great game last week, but I think this one they kind of dial it back and let the offense take over a little bit. So I think that'll probably be a pretty medium to high scoring game, I guess. In the Big 12.
And it's crazy to think that Baylor was the team that started the preseason. In the top 10. They last year we know that they beat Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship. They have a lot of high hopes going into this year, and they just fall flat. I mean, last week they get absolutely embarrassed at home against Kansas State, 31-3. Their offense couldn't get it going. And, Dave Aranda, is known for his good defense, but his defense just got flat out torched by Adrian Martinez in the passing game. And then Deuce Vaughn was able to get as well. So glaring signs. And then for TCU, I think you just got to keep your emotions in check. I know that was a big win on the road in Houston. I mean, not in Houston, and in Austin, excuse me. Get mixed up on the cities there. But I think that I just can't pick against the Horned Frogs right now. They're one of the hottest teams in the country. I think they get it done. I'll go 31-14. I think they make a statement to the playoff committee that they are definitely warranted at that number 4 ranking. So I'm going to go with TCU.
Yeah, and then our second game in the Big 12. Oh, well, Jet says, better watch out, Baylor. TCU can play some defense. Might be a lopsided victory. Yeah, I think so, Jet. Yeah, I think it really could be a lopsided victory. I think 31 points I'm given for Baylor is pretty generous. But, yeah, could be a big win for TCU. And like Tyler said, I think it really could stake their claim to be inside that top 4 when the season ends. But our second game here in the Big 12, Texas, the Longhorns are headed to Lawrence, Kansas to face off against the Jayhawks. I think this is an interesting game because I think Kansas is paying attention to what happened in last week's game. Mark my words, I mean, Kansas can score the football still. And I think Texas looks like they're struggling against mediocre to bad defenses to score the football, especially at home. So I think I'm going to take the home team here. I'm going to take Kansas. I think the Jayhawks get a win here, a big one. Even though Texas is not ranked anymore, I still think Kansas could take care of business at home. It'll be a somewhat close game only because these teams are really closely matched. I think still, So I'm going to go 34-31, and I'll take Kansas.
Yeah, whenever Kansas, has been in the dumpster, the other teams have been blowing them out. But that one team that they beat has always been these Texas Longhorns. There's just something about this Texas Kansas matchup and the way that Kansas, has been playing. They just coming off a loss at the Texas Tech. They did not play good on defense. So I think that this is going to be more of a high scoring battle. Texas definitely has the advantage on the defense, but I think the way Bean has been playing, I've just got to give this one to Kansas. I think that the home crowd we'll feed into that. Kansas defense has been very sloppy the last couple of weeks. They started off the season strong. It was looking like a rebuild on the defensive side. So, Texas is getting the 9 points. I think at the very least, Kansas will cover that. But in the end, I'm going to go with the outright upset. I'm going to go the Jayhawks. And this one in a high scoring battle will be close. I'll go 35-34. They get the 1 point victory.
Always that 1 point victory over Texas. That makes it sting just a little bit more for those Longhorns fans. But moving from the Big 12 to the Big 10, a couple of good ones here in the Big 10 this week. And the first one being Illinois. They're traveling to Ann Arbor to face off against Michigan. Michigan is currently the number 3 team in the country there for you guys watching. But, this is an intriguing game for me, I think, because Illinois has a loss to Purdue last week. It's a tough loss, but Michigan hasn't seen this team since the revamped Fighting Illini team. So I'm not sure if they know what's going on. From Illinois standpoint, I think that this can definitely be a trap game. I know I picked the upset on Sports Scramble, for our upset picks. I think Illinois, all jokes aside, I think Illinois actually can compete in this game. I think weather is a big impact for this game. So I think it can be a really close game. I did pick the upset on Sports Scramble here on there, but I think on here, I'll take Michigan at home. But I think it's only a touchdown victory in this, to be honest with you. I think it is a low scoring game. It's going to be tough to move the football in this one. Battle in the trenches will be tough. So I'm probably going to go 28-25 in this one, because Illinois is home of the wacky scores. So I'll give Michigan the 3-point victory at home.
Yeah, this is going to be the battle of the running game. So if you're looking for some elite passing, this is not the game for you. Chase Brown, I know, went out for injury, but there's reports that he's going to be good to go. And that's definitely good news if you're a Fighting Illini fan. I mean, if Chase Brown doesn't play in this one, it's going to be a Michigan rout. It's just they don't even need to show up at that rate. But on Michigan's side, you can't really look past Illinois in this one. They got a sneaky good defense, and if you can't stop them on the ground, they can just control the time of possession. It'd be like a 3-0 game at the half. They love to just play 1980s Big Ten football over there in Illinois. But on Michigan's side, they've really been rolling over. I know that they struggled against Rutgers, but in the end, the final scores show that they were definitely a better football team than Rutgers. But I just can't really figure out Illinois in this one, so I can't really put my trust and my pick in this one. So I think that Michigan, this is where they flex their muscle before that big game in Columbus. I think Michigan this one pretty convincingly. I'll go 35-10 in the Big House.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there. Is Michigan looking ahead in this one? And also that being Michigan struggled in the first half last week against Rutgers, and that was ugly. I mean, it was an ugly struggle for Michigan's offense, and I think Illinois will probably be watching the tape from that to see what they can take advantage of in Michigan early on in this game, because like a lot of other teams at the top of the rankings right now, Michigan is one of those teams that struggled to get started in football games, and I think that Illinois probably wants to take advantage of that right off the bat. They've got nothing to lose against the number 3 team in the country, and I think that gives them a little bit of an edge in that. But it'll be a great game to watch, and I'll be watching that. I'm sure you will be, glancing back and forth at it. But at the other game in the Big Ten, the Iowa Hawkeyes are headed to Minnesota to face off against the Golden Gophers. I think this is going to be an interesting game because of the way the Big Ten West, like we mentioned, is stacked right now, in the sense of everybody, not stacked as in everybody's good. Everybody is about the same level of good and bad, because everybody's right there within a game, it feels like. So I think this is a good opportunity for Iowa to get a win on the road because they've got a great defense. Minnesota has struggled to score the ball. Is Tanner Morgan back?
I'm not sure. It's not looking like it.
I think he's probably out for the rest of the year. So they are rolling with a true freshman at quarterback. I know they're at home, but this is an Iowa defense that hasn't skipped a beat, really, even though offensively they're having problems. I mean, their defense can score more points and looks better on offense than their offense does. So I think I'm going to take the Hawkeyes to win this on the road. Maybe a close football game here. I'm going to go with a low scoring one. I think it's going to be 21-10, and I'll take Iowa.
Yeah, I think this is just a for sure bet that this is going to be, one of the lower scoring games of the weekend. Two of the best defenses in the Big Ten. Like you mentioned, Tanner Morgan is going to be questionable going into this game. We don't know if he's going to play. Minnesota's offense just looks, completely different. Both of these schools like to run the ball. Like to control the time of possession. These are just the two prototypical Big Ten teams. So I'm going to go with Iowa. I just think that their defense has been playing lights out. Iowa started off the season, very slow, very yellow on offense. They still are. I'm not saying that like over time that they're just the best, but they did get some on the week. So it would just be an Iowa thing. They sucked at the start of the year, then they just find themselves in Indianapolis. That would just be a complete Iowa thing to do. So I think that Iowa wins this game. I think it will be close just because the road environment is going to be probably in the 20s in Minnesota, like it always is in these months. But I'm going to go 17-14 in favor of the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, another low scoring one there predicted for you. But yeah, I know.
More than 10 points.
It
Are we
seems
thinking
strange.
3 defensive touchdowns?
Yeah, it seems
Honestly, I don't
interesting.
think 3. You get at least 1, I would say.
I'll give them one on a pick six or a strip sack,
Yeah.
or something like that for a fumble recovery. I think that's an ultimate possibility. But their offense is going to have to step up eventually and score at least one touchdown for them to win this football game. But moving away from the Big Ten, we'll go out west to the Pac-12. Great games here in the Pac-12. I mean, the Pac-12 is the conference to watch this weekend. For everybody out there watching college football, watch the Pac-12. This is great here because USC is traveling right down the road. They're going to get in their little scooters and go down the road to UCLA to face off against the Bruins. This is a great game, and I circled this at the beginning of the year, and I said this is going to be a really big game when we get towards the end of the year. And it is. Both teams are right there, looking down the barrel of an opportunity to go to the Pac-12 championship. So, USC is at number 7. They're kind of just hanging around. It's one of those things where their only loss is an overtime loss to Utah. It's tough, that happened because I think that they know their playoff chances are probably dashed if they can't win the rest of their games and something happens with the committee and they consider them to be that fourth team to come in because it's going to be them or Tennessee at the end of the day. I feel like that they're going to be flipping the coin and see who makes it there. But I think Tennessee's loss is tough. I think it's a big loss to Georgia. I mean, it speaks volumes for USC that they only lost by 1 point at the end of a overtime. But this one here, I feel like UCLA has still something left in the tank. I mean, with Zach Charbonnet at the running back and DTR at quarterback, I still feel like they have something left in the tank, and I feel like they're saving it up for this game. I mean, if UCLA can get the running game going, I think this game is over in the first half. That's one of those things where these games are either really close or they are blowouts. So I'm going to take UCLA at home over USC. I think they win by a touchdown in this one. I think it's going to be a close game. But I'm going to go 38-31, and I'll take the Bruins.
Yeah, I mean, looking at these two offenses is completely different. I know that UCLA loves to run the ball with Charbonnet, but DTR can also, beat you through the air. USC, Caleb Williams is getting all the hype of being in the Heisman contention. Jordan Addison, the addition of him has really been phenomenal for that offense. But these two defenses are probably one of the two worst in the Pac-12. They can't really stop anybody. I know that like USC is coming off of a game where they only allowed 14 points to Colorado, but college football fans know how bad Colorado has been. But UCLA, on the other hand, coming off of an embarrassing loss at home to Arizona, they were still, I know that they were number 12, but I feel like if you run the table, especially if you beat USC at home, if you beat, the winner of that Utah Oregon game that we'll be talking about. But these are probably the two hardest games on the slate to pick this week. But I'm going to go with USC on the road. I think that USC is going to be a very good game, back and forth battle for 4 quarters. I'll definitely be tuning into these two Pac-12 games. I don't think it's like as late as it is. I think both of these games are 7 and 6:30. So in the end, I'm going to go with USC in the Santa Roll rivalry game. I'm going to give them the 41-38 win. I think there's going to be a lot of points, so take the over in this one.
Yeah, definitely. And that one, Tyler, giving you a little bit of betting insight there for those that want to put a little money down, or as we say, sprinkle a little money down on this upcoming weekend's games. To the other game in the Pac-12 there, number 10, Utah. They've returned back to number 10. Can you believe it, Tyler?
No,
They
I
have
feel
now.
like that's a team that we're all talking about USC, always talking about Oregon, but no one's talking about poor old Utah. Their loss to Florida on the road, and then their other loss. What was their other loss? I can't even. Oh, was it UCLA? Yeah, it was UCLA. They got UCLA really put up a good showing against them.
Yeah, and the Utah Utes are headed to Eugene, Oregon for another game, home game for Oregon. It'll probably be crappy weather once again, as it normally is. But I think the story of this is that these two games, the winner of these two games, could ultimately determine who plays against each other in the Pac-12 championship. I
Yeah.
mean, you really could get either a UCLA and Utah rematch for the Pac-12 championship in Las Vegas. You could get a USC and Oregon game, a USC and Utah rematch again. There's a lot of opportunity there to see what happens for some of these teams, because these really are the top 4 teams in the Pac-12 looking at it right now. So I think the biggest storyline is Oregon realistically going to lose 2 games at home back to back. I don't see it happening. That's the only reason. I'm looking at analytics in this, and I just feel like there's no way Oregon loses 2 games at home back to back. So I'm going to take the Ducks at home. Sets up for a good one for me, at least. I've got UCLA and Oregon playing in the Pac-12 championship, based on all that. But I think it'll be interesting to see that Utah and Oregon game. I just feel like if Cam Rising is a veteran quarterback, Bo Nix is considered a veteran quarterback at this point. It's talking about who's going to be able to move the ball better. I don't think it's going to be about who's going to score a ton of points to open the game. It's all going to be about who's going to be able to balance the offense and move the ball. And I think Oregon will be able to do that at home. So I'll give them the 3-point victory. I think it'll be a little lower scoring than we normally see from big games. So I'm going to go 31-28, and the Ducks somehow hang on at home.
And Chet adds USC equals University of Switching Colleges because half of their teams in the transfer portal. Actually, I lied. It is actually the Oregon-Utah game is actually a traditional Pac-12 after dark, 9:30. So I guess we're all going to be staying up till midnight or 1 because it's definitely going to be a game that I'll be watching for sure. But yeah, like you mentioned, I know it's tough. Looking at this game, Utah has been one of the scorching teams. After that UCLA game, they've just been beating teams left and right. They've been doing it behind Cam Rising as well. So I know that both of us, that we were very high on this Utah team, coming off that terrific season last year, winning the Pac-12 against the same Oregon team. But you forgot to mention, Utah owns Oregon in the past 2 seasons. So I think that the Ducks, I know that they lost last week. I think they lose again. I think that Utah, I'm going to ride with Cam Rising in the offense. I think that it could be a defensive battle. I wouldn't be surprised if, both offenses struggle in the first half. But in the end, I think that the winner will get into the 30s. So I'm going to go with the same exact score as you. I'll go Utah 31-28. Just flip the winner. So I'm going to go with the Utes.
Tyler's rolling with the Utes. I'm rolling with the Ducks. It'll be a tough one here. We both pick opposite teams in the Pac-12 game, so it'll be great to watch some of these games this weekend, and then we'll both be eyes glued to the TV to see what happens in these late games.
For sure.
But moving from the Pac-12, we're going back to the South again for the SEC. A couple of good ones here. I mean, here's the real question, Tyler. For those, watching the show right now, you've got number one Georgia headed to Kentucky, and you've got Ole Miss headed to Fayetteville to face off against Arkansas. Are either of these teams on upset alert?
I would feel like the team on the right is more inclined because Kentucky just lost to Vanderbilt, who had a SEC losing streak of 26 games. So the way that Kentucky offense has been rolling, going up against the best defense in the country, I feel like Kentucky probably has no shot in that first game.
Yeah, I think Georgia is going to be able to roll pretty easily in this one. Kentucky just doesn't look right, and they haven't since that loss at Ole Miss. They just don't look like the same team. At quarterback, they look different. Will Levis doesn't look like the guy he has been, and the guy that Mel Kiper's been, Todd McShay, have been talking about, all beginning of the season. And I know you had a gripe with that in last night's show on Sports Scramble.
I'll save it
You
for
talk
tonight's show.
yeah, and yeah, I know you talked a little bit about how he's, basically a fraud at this point to be a first round pick in the NFL draft, and I have to agree with you in that. I think Will Levis had his opportunities. It was kind of the future of Penn State. And decided to go separate ways and go to the SEC to see what could happen. And they look good for a year, and it doesn't look like the same team. The Kentucky team that can go in and upset somebody on a given weekend. Chet said Kentucky's got to get it done. Yeah, they got to get it done
He's
for
a
Chet.
liar. He didn't even pick Kentucky to win.
Kentucky's got to get it done for Chet's college football playoff predictions to happen, because Georgia looks like the number one team right now, and Chet's got to hope Kentucky can win a football game for Georgia not to be number one in the country. But yeah, I think Georgia wins this one 45-14. I think it's a blowout, even though it is in Kentucky. Just too much firepower from Georgia as usual.
Yeah, the problem with Kentucky's offense, if Chris Rodriguez Jr. can be effective on the ground, then they're pretty much it's a ball game. I mean, Will Levis has really struggled in the past couple of weeks, especially against Vanderbilt. Didn't even find the end zone once through the air. He had a late interception that really sealed the deal. And Georgia has been playing like a team that I don't really see anyone on the, especially in the regular season. We'll see if anyone in the postseason can knock them off. But I'm gonna go Georgia in this one. I think they blow the doors off of Kentucky. I'll go 42-7. I think that Kentucky will struggle on offense against Georgia. I think it's a rout as Georgia will end this season 12-0 because they got Georgia Tech next week, and that would be a cakewalk.
Yeah, I think it's just a tune-up game for them for the playoff and what's to come for the SEC championship game against LSU in a couple of weeks. But for Ole Miss, they're headed to Fayetteville. Arkansas in a tough game battle against LSU this past week. Ole Miss couldn't squeak it out like we talked about earlier against Alabama. They don't fall very far. I mean, they're only at 14 right now. Playoff rankings do come out tomorrow evening, but I think the story is that Arkansas is running with a third string quarterback. They got nothing to lose. They know where they stand. And I think they can win this football game, to be honest with you. I think Ole Miss can lose back-to-back football games, and I think this is an opportunity for Arkansas to leapfrog a couple of teams over there in the SEC West. And I think that this is an opportunity for them. It's an opportunity for another quarterback to show up and say, hey, look, maybe it's not all what is cut out to be, for Sam Pittman and his decision, for KJ Jefferson. I know a lot of what's talked about is KJ Jefferson probably ready to go for this week. But I don't know what's going to happen. They might rest him. It just doesn't seem wise for him to go back in at this stage of the season. I just feel like get your younger guys some experience at this point and roll with it. And that's kind of what I think this game should be. If Arkansas can move the ball on the ground and in the air, their defense looked great last week. I think they take this game pretty easily. I'm going to go 27-17. I think that the Hogs get it done.
Yeah, for Ole Miss, with all the Lane Kiffin news swirling around, he's going to go to Auburn, he's going to go to Nebraska, or is he going to stay in Ole Miss? How's the mindset of that team is going to be? You have two losses. really, I mean, you can still have an outside shot to go into a New Year's Six bowl game. The problem is there's too many SEC teams in front of you. They don't really have the head-to-head against them. So we'll probably see Ole Miss in one of the Florida Bowl games. Maybe we see an Ole Miss Penn State matchup in the Reliant Quest or the Citrus Bowl. Who knows? But I think, on the other side, like you mentioned, KJ Jefferson's availability is going to be the storyline, as it always been for the past 2 weeks. Arkansas's defense played the best game of the year. Their pass defense has been struggling. They gave up 40 points to Mississippi State. Auburn was able to pass it all over them as well. But I think that, Arkansas wasn't able to win last week's game against LSU. Raheem Sanders, was really bogged down against LSU's defensive line. I think that this week, Raheem Sanders will be able to be unleashed against Ole Miss's rush defense that hasn't been so great. Alabama was able to run on them. LSU was able to run on them. So, unlike you, I know that you picked Illinois, your upset pick. You ended up picking Michigan. I picked Arkansas as my upset pick. I'm actually going to go all the way. Call the Hogs. I think that Arkansas gets it done. This is always close. There's always some wacky play that happens as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's like a fake field goal for a touchdown to win the game or something like that. But I think that Arkansas wins this one 35-31. I'm going to go with the Hogs at home.
Tyler's going with the woo. So he's rolling with the Hogs. Like
Vote for all with the Hogs.
Yeah, so moving from the SEC, we'll go to the Group of 5 game of the week. A good one here in the state of Mississippi. Hattiesburg, to be exact, only about an hour away from me here. My school will be going, that is South Alabama, will be headed to Hattiesburg to face off against Southern Miss. There'll be a lot of familiar and friendly faces at this game.
A lot of family ties in this matchup.
Yes, a lot of family ties here in this matchup here. Of course, Southern Miss being a new addition to the Sun Belt brings this rivalry alive for some families and friends down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So I think the story of this game is South Alabama is a way different team than what most people expected them to be. Like we've said, week to week, big win last week. A good win against a Texas State team that struggled. So South Alabama stands at 8-2, which is amazing. I think it's almost laughable to think about it that way. It just seems so strange. It's like a TCU story. But they're just not undefeated. South Alabama had every chance to be an undefeated team this year so far. I mean, your 1 point loss to UCLA, really is tough, and it still looks like a really good loss because they're ranked number 16 in the country.
Let's be real. Like they're like 3-4 points away from being an undefeated team and being in the top 15.
Mm-hmm. They really are. I mean, you're very close loss to a terrible night against Troy. I mean, Troy is still sitting at the top of the division because they're also 8-2. It just seems like they match each other shot for shot every year. If they both suck, if one team sucks, they both suck. If one team's good, the other team's good. That's what it seems like now. It's going to be a battle like that in that side of the division. But I think for this game here, I think South Alabama gets it done pretty easily against Southern Miss. It's basically another home game. It's only about an hour and a half to 2-hour ride up to Hattiesburg. So I think that South Alabama takes care of business in this one. I'm going to go 37-10. I know it's an interesting point margin there, but it's Sun Belt football. So Sun Belt, Fun Belt, and I think South Alabama gets it done.
And as Chet mentions, this game is also on the NFL Network, which is sad to me. I don't catch the NFL Network, so hopefully I can find a way to watch this game because this, the Mississippi Gulf Coast matchup. Kudos to the Sun Belt. They, unlike the Big Ten, let's just get some teams from the big all the way on the West Coast. Sun Belt does it right. They got Southern Miss in here. I think this is going to be the next great rivalry in that division. For South Alabama, like you mentioned, they went from being a dumpster fire last year to being 8-2. The same for Tulane. Tulane, last year was 2-10 as well. Now they're 8-2. So South Alabama, they definitely need to win this game. There's still an outside shot for them that they can win the division. They would just need a Troy loss. I thought that it was going to happen a couple of weeks ago against Louisiana, but I think that You know,
I
they
thought it
have
was
you.
I thought it was going to happen this past weekend. Only won by 1 point against a terrible Army team. You won
Well, it wouldn't
10
have
to
mattered. They
9.
had to. Their one loss has to be in the Sun Belt, and Army is an independent, so that really
Sure.
wouldn't
Yeah,
have
but
really done
still.
anything. But there is still an outside shot. I'm hoping that South Alabama can make it to the New Orleans Bowl. If they do, I'm definitely going to that game 100%. I'm gonna like text up my sister, let's go, because I have family ties to South Alabama, so I can't go against that. So sorry, Southern Miss. It's going to be all Jags. So I'm going to go 35-21. I think that Southern Miss offense will be able to score, but I feel like every time I watch South Alabama, they're always getting an interception. So I feel like their defense will rise to the occasion, and then Caleb Bradley will be able to get the job done. So I'm going to go with the Jags.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a battle of the running game in that one.
Oh, yeah.
But we're both rolling with the Jags in that one.
Shouldn't
Uh,
be a shocker.
yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, you know what's up next, guys. It is our AP Top 25 risers and fallers. Of course, we do our show on Monday, so we don't have our college football rankings out just yet.
Right.
But of course, this segment is sponsored by Fanatics. If you guys want to head over there and get all of your team gear, there's only 2 regular season games left in college football season. So you better get it now because, there's a lot of good games coming up in the next 2 weeks. So if you guys want to go over there and get some gear, you guys can use our link in our show description there. Of course, if you're watching, you see it there. But head over to Fanatics, get all your team gear. Tyler, what is the code today? It's probably the same as yesterday if I
Yeah,
had
it
to
is the
guess.
same as yesterday, but I'll be interested to see when we go live next week because I'll be Thanksgiving week, and I'm sure they'll have some Black Friday deals. So we'll definitely give out all the codes that week. So they have some good stuff as always, but I feel like whenever definitely if you want some Christmas gifts, it would definitely be next week during the Black Friday and then the Cyber Monday. So because I'm sure that will also be live on Cyber Monday, so that'll be helpful e-commerce shopper. So that is the code for today, Rose. You have 6 hours and 58 minutes, but don't you worry, Fanatics runs daily deals, so you can use our link there. Help us out.
Absolutely. You guys can do some Cyber Monday shopping while you're listening to the show at the
Yeah,
same time. It's
absolutely.
a good opportunity to support us, support yourself, support your team, and everybody. It's a win-win-win right there. So if you guys want to head over there and get all your team gear, you can do that at Fanatics. Tyler, our AP Top 25 risers and fallers, who, first of all, we love to talk about our risers first, and who we think is a really good team that's rose up the ranks for the week based on a win or another team's loss. So that's a nice thing about top 25. But Tyler, who is your AP riser of the week?
Well, I love to give a shout out to the group of 5 every week in this. I'm going to go with the Liberty Flames. They went from number 19 to being unranked. And from one week, they go like high on the pedestal. Hugh Freeze goes on the road back to SEC country. They beat Arkansas 21-19. They were up 21-0 in that game. And then the next week, what do? They lose to UConn on the road. UConn, it's been a great story. They were absolutely terrible.
So you're giving your faller first, correct?
Yes, I'm giving my follow first.
Okay.
UConn was absolutely terrible the first couple of weeks, and now all of a sudden they're bowl eligible. And who would have thought they have like a better record than some of these teams that were ranked in the preseason top 25 poll? So I got to give it to Liberty. Still a good football team, but you just can't lose a game like that on the road, especially after beating an SEC team like that.
Yeah, and for me, my team for the faller has to be Texas. A bad loss at home. You were expected to win this game. You were a 5-point favorite at home against a really good TCU team, and you got beat by 7. And you couldn't really muster up any offense other than a scoop and score at the end of the game to score 10 points. Couldn't even get in the end zone on offense, which is pretty sad. We're remotely close. So Texas looks like they are falling apart slowly, and of course I picked against them this week. I think we both picked the Jayhawks, this week, and I think that the whole Texas is back thing is going to have to wait for another year because Texas and Texas A&M have the same story every single season. Oh, well, Texas A&M is ranked in the top 10. Well, they might be a really good team this year, and then they suck. And then you've got Texas. Well, Texas is back. They've won 3 games. Oh my God!
Miami makes a good coaching hire, and then they're not even in the top 25. Just like all these teams, I feel like we just need to do away with the preseason polls because in the end, it doesn't matter. The only polls that matter are the college football playoff rankings. So Might as well just
Yeah.
not even have a poll during that time and just wait till the first week of November and just use that. Like, doesn't even matter. Like don't even put any rank versus rank matches because in the end, like I mentioned, like the college football playoff rankings are the rankings.
Yeah, and it brings me to another point. Do we think that there really should be rankings at all until we get to like halfway through the season
Right. Yeah,
or
I
to a
definitely
certain point
agree.
in the season? I
Yeah.
just feel like it doesn't make any sense to do that. All it
Right.
does is cause more stress and anxiety, not
Yeah.
only for fans, but for,
Because if you really think about
programs.
it, the preseason polls they really base it on what you did last year and then the recruiting. All right, we did like give an example. I know that we rag about Texas A&M, but it's just really the truth. I mean, they had the number one recruiting class. It pretty much didn't lose anybody to the NFL draft. They really lost some key pieces on defense and offensive line. But, this was supposed to be a team, they were picked like to finish second, be the team to contend in the SEC West against Alabama. Here they are, in last place in the SEC, not even going to make it to a bowl game. So I feel like, for that scenario, preseason polls just do away with them. Don't even rank teams until you get into the October month. That's really when it starts to matter. So yeah, I just feel like I'm sure that I'm not the only one. I've definitely heard a lot of people say that preseason polls are dumb. But yeah, in the end, honestly I only care about the CFP rankings.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I feel like we should just wait for the college football rankings to come out in the AP top 25 really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things at the end of the season because we do away with it. Um, as soon as the college football rankings come out. Is it a good baseline? Sure, it's a good baseline. Uh, but we also, you and I have also said let's make these people in the committee room actually work for their money. And I think that's a good opportunity for them to work for their money.
Yeah.
Square one. Here are the good teams, here are the bad teams. Let's put our top 25 or our top 25 playoff rankings together because I mean that's all what everybody shoots for at the end of the day, and then you can base that off of your bowls and everything else. But got off topic for a second. But moving to the risers, Tyler, who is your riser in the top 25?
I'm gonna head out west. They got me the dub in my upset pick. I'm gonna go with the Huskies of Washington, moving all the way up to 9 spots to number 15. I think I wouldn't be surprised if they made that big of a jump in tomorrow night's rankings. Later rankings tomorrow, since they have the State Farm Champions Classic, it will actually be 8 o'clock Central. So it's a late one for us at 9 o'clock on the East Coast. But I think looking at Washington, I think that they're going to go 10-2. They have 1-8, 1-9 in Colorado this week. I think they get it done. You Washington looking at it, 31-point favorite. I think they get the job done. And I think on the road in the Apple Cup, usually they dominate that series. So you think that Washington is going to be 10-2. I think they need a little chaos to happen for them to sneak in, since their one loss is to UCLA, and the other is to, let me see who else, Arizona State. So yeah, they need someone to lose. So they're probably rooting for actually UCLA to lose, but that really wouldn't help their case. So realistically, probably Washington won't make it to the Pac-12 championship, but they could still make it to a very good bowl game. So really good season for Washington so far, especially with the transfer coming in. Really no expectations that they had. Really no one thought that Washington was going to be good, but look, this is realistically looking like a 10-win team, so they're definitely easily my riser of the week.
Yeah, and for me, I think my riser of the week is going to be UCF. They got a good win against the Tulane team that's looked really good this year. UCF has a couple of losses on their schedule. First one on the road at East Carolina, a game that they had no business losing, that they lost. They scored 70 points the week before against Temple, and then they lose to a East Carolina team the next week, which is terrible. And of course, they bounce back after their week 2 loss at home against Louisville in the bounce house. So I just feel like UCF has started to figure it out here and there. You've got 2 ranked wins in the last 3 weeks. First one coming against Cincinnati when you're at home, and the second one coming on the road at Tulane. So you got Navy and South Florida finish the season out. Realistically, they could win out the rest of their schedule and only be a 2-loss team at the end of it all, which is crazy to think. But after the year that they've had and the roller coaster ride, they really should be a 10-1 team. To be honest with you, I think that they lost that Louisville game because Louisville was a better team, and that one is only a 6-point loss. But there's no reason zero reason to lose to a bad team, late in the season. So I think that them moving up 5 spots to 17 from 22 is good for them, gets them in good quality position for a bowl game once the season closes out. But, Tyler, our last part of our show, of course, is always our question and our news. But of course, we've always got a curveball for you guys. And the first one being it's a new sponsor. And the new sponsor is Yeti for our news and question segment. Yeti is offering free shipping on all orders over $50. So if you guys want to go over there and get all your cooler, drinkware, and luggage needs for any adventure you're going on, I'm taking a little flight here close to Thanksgiving time, and I might try out some Yeti stuff for that. So if you guys want to use our link in our show there and go get you something for the holidays. Go get somebody something for the holidays. I'm sure we'll have a lot of Cyber Monday deals, of course, with Yeti to throw at you guys. So they've always got some high durability stuff there. I said to myself, I need me a dog because let me tell you what, their dog bowls are like freaking industrial. I could throw them off a cliff and that thing wouldn't have a dent in it. And it they have some cool stuff, some cool cups and everything, and I hold on to those. I take one with me almost every day. So it's one of those things. But if you guys want to go over there and get all the cool little trinkets and things that Yeti has to offer, and of course you get free shipping on all those over $50. So check that out. Tyler, moving to our news and question. First thing is the news. I'll let you take it away because you kind of are the news guy and you're the news anchor for this.
Yeah, really nothing news for the second straight week. We had Kansas becoming bowl eligible, and the next week we have UConn of all teams becoming bowl eligible for the first time since the 2015 season. So we're gonna have some new teams, new faces in this bowl season. So that's really good for the college football season. I don't really see Vanderbilt getting a bowl eligibility since they had to face off against Tennessee in the next 2 weeks, and they had to play Florida as well. So we probably won't see another like Cinderella story, but really good win for this past weekend. We talked about it. They beat Liberty at home. Jim Mora has done a terrific program builder. He built a really good program at UCLA, and then the last couple of years really fell off. But got to give it to those UConn Huskies. It would definitely be interesting to see where they go and who they face off against.
Yeah, it'll be great for them. Congratulations to UConn in moving up there for the second week in a row. We have a congratulations statement. Yay! So congratulations to Kansas and UConn for both becoming bowl eligible in the last 2 weeks here. And of course, that brings us to our question to close out our show. And speaking of the Group of Five, which Group of Five team will reach a New Year's Six bowl, Tyler? Who do you think is that team that could possibly crack a New Year's Six bowl and be there once the holidays come around?
Well, to give our viewers an idea, the highest ranked Group of Five right now in the AP poll is number 17 UCF. Then you have number 21 Tulane, 22 is Cincinnati, and 23 is Coastal Carolinas. And interesting thing is UCF, I feel like looking at their schedule, undefeated the rest of the way. They have Navy 3-7. Navy played Notre Dame close, so we could see, maybe Navy pulls off an upset, really shakes it up. And then they travel to South Florida, the annual battle for I-4. But South Florida is not the South Florida as usual. They're 1-9. So I feel like UCF is they've already clinched. They do have a head-to-head, not only against Cincinnati, but against Tulane as well. So UCF, I think, in my opinion, has already clinched an American Conference Championship. Now, the interesting thing about the other two, Tulane and Cincinnati, they both play each other and it's on the road in Cincinnati. So I think that Cincinnati will beat them. So I think that Tulane is eliminated. And so it will probably be another Cincinnati and UCF rematch. Now, here's the deal. UCF beat Cincinnati. I think what happens, Cincinnati comes back and beats UCF. It's very hard to do that. And then you have Coastal just sitting in the water. The Teal is going to make it to a New Year's Six bowl game, baby. The Chants go to the Cotton Bowl to face off probably against one of the bigger teams. And we'll see if they can maybe they face off against an Alabama. Who knows?
I know. I just thought about that. Now that you say that, I really thought about that. Yeah, the last time we really saw something like that happen was Penn State and Memphis face off against each other in the Cotton Bowl,
Yeah, then
and that
that
was an
didn't go.
interesting.
We saw Western Michigan versus Wisconsin. I mean, we've
Mhm.
seen some of these smaller schools face off. I mean, they played them well, but in the end, Power Five flexed their muscle. But if Coastal gets in, they have the offense to contend with someone.
Yeah,
Especially if
and
they like. What if a Clem? I feel like if Clemson versus Coastal, man, what a battle that would be! Be the battle for South Carolina, but I think that would be like their best chance to pull off like a major upset.
yeah, I think it really is, and I'm gonna go with Coastal Carolina as well. I think they really have a chance. They're 9-1 right now. They have every chance in the world to finish at 11-1, and another great season for them. And like we've said, I said, Coastal Carolina's head coach really could be the next one to come out of the group of five and be that next really good turnaround coach for a team that's struggling in the Power Five. So I think that for Coastal, it's a good spot for them to be in, and I think that they can play against a team like Alabama. There, there's a number of teams there to pick from that they could play against. Once it comes around, once everything finishes out, I can see them playing against an Ole Miss team. I could see them playing against a North Carolina team. There's a lot of options there uh, for that. So we'll see what happens and what comes around. So great picks for both of us as a group of five team there. Of course, it is in the Sun Belt. We got to give our Sun Belt some love. They're on the rise, and they're right there at clipping at people's heels. So I think be on the lookout for them. I think in the next couple of years, we could see 2 or 3 Sun Belt teams, in the lower part of the top 25. And really try to, at that point, we'll be talking about the 12 team playoff. And if the team can squeak into that, 12th spot as a group of five team, it really means a lot for those programs moving forward. So great for them, great for us, because more to talk about outside of the group of five or outside of the Power Five because we love talking about the group of five. Uh, but that is going to be all for our show, guys. We're getting close to our normal time, that we finish up, so right on schedule. But of course, if you guys want to see any more content from us two or any other show that we have on Sunday nights, we do record Sports Scramble, and that is live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Of course, we have the audio that does come out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. And that's on Sunday nights. And of course, that's with our co host, Chet and Wade. So we can see you guys on that show on Sunday nights to talk about all things sports, not just only college football. On Mondays, you guys can catch us normally at 3 o'clock. Like we were today, and we will talk about college football. That's what we do best, Tyler. And of course, on Tuesday nights, normally you can catch SEC Talk with Wade and Tyler. But of course, they're on tonight.
Yep.
They pushed their show up
A few hours away.
ahead, a few hours away. So if you guys want to see all things SEC football coming up on SEC Talk, you guys can head over there because they'll have some hot takes there on what's happening late in the season. But of course, also, I have to close it out with saying we are a part of a new network, and that is Belly Up Sports. So if you guys want to check out all of the shows over on Belly Up Sports, it would be much appreciated for all of them and for us as we grow with this new network. It's a great opportunity, not only for us, but for them. And we look to connecting with more of you guys through new networks. And that's what it is. It's all about meeting new people for us and connecting and spreading the word out there and growing our show as much as possible in support for you guys in all of your love of the fandom of the sport of football. So we will see you guys, of course, for the last week of college football. And Tyler, it's going to be a really good one. We'll be talking about it. It's going to be sad, though, because it's the last
Yeah, we
regular
still
season.
got conference championship and bowl week,
Yep.
so it's not over yet.
Guys, we're going to be talking about football until the first week of January.
And
So there'll
in the
be
off
plenty of
season too.
there'll be plenty of time to talk about college football. And of course, once the season ends, we're talking about next season right away.
Right.
And of course, you guys can hear all things coming up to close the season out on Mondays from us at 3 o'clock. We will see you guys next week at 3 o'clock on Monday for all things college football.